Today I want to talk about Fable 5. So about a week ago now, I believe Anthropic re-released their Fable model for public consumption, and they decided to actually, for this first week, re-release it at a discounted rate where it would effectively cost or consume half the amount of tokens in the standard and I think pro plans or something like that, to allow users to get a feel for the Fable model. And I've decided I'd spend like whatever free time or most of my free time this week playing around with Fable and kind of seeing how good it really is. And to be honest, I've been really impressed. And I'll get into that in just a minute. But I have basically been building, I think, five or six standalone projects really, currently, and I do it concurrently, like all at the same time, and I'm using that Fable model to do so, and it's really kind of hands off, and I'm able to one shot a lot of implementation using Fable in conjunction with spec-driven development. Specifically, I'm using the OpenSpec framework or package through npm, and yeah, it's been quite seamless, to be honest. So let me get into it. So I have a specific use case that I've used the Fable model to solve, which I wanted to talk about today. But before I get into that, I wanted to give a bit of a background on the problem I'm trying to solve. So when I'm working with my agents, I typically use this WesTerm configuration with a bunch of different terminals or terminal multiplexers running so that I can kind of do a lot of different things in parallel. As you can see, I've got this one split into 4 chunks, and I'll probably talk about this in a separate video, my kind of setup and how I like to optimize my workspace for working with AI. But I've got effectively 4 workspaces here for 4 different projects that I'm talking to my agents to do a bunch of different work in parallel, basically. All of them using Fable this week because it's cheap for now. But yeah, basically the problem I'm trying to solve is doing all this work. Fable's doing a bunch of changes under the hood, and it's hard for me to typically visualize this cleanly using like a git diff, because obviously I'm using the CLI here, and I always have had a preference for GUIs over TUIs, right? So I like to visualize the git diff, and typically what I'll do is I might crack open VS Code here and then git diff it myself and kind of look at what the agent has done and what kind of changes they've made before approving, merging, and subsequently getting this like deployed to release or whatever. And that's fine, but it's kind of hard to visualize maybe changes that you didn't commit or like incremental changes that the agent is making, and it kind of all just becomes a mess. So the problem I'm ending up wanting to solve is I want to create a GUI that can track the state of these agents and basically allow me to easily visualize the git diff for the different conversation states that these agents are in for multiple projects in parallel. And this, I wanted to be like a Windows application, which eventually could be adapted into a web platform as well, and it could integrate with Claude and GitHub so that I could also see analytics and see like maybe information on my CI/CD pipeline to see if anything's failing, and I can kind of do all of that in parallel. And I decided I would use Claude Fable 5 in conjunction with OpenSpec to get something like that working. So I'll quickly give you an example of what the OpenSpec, so using spec-driven development, obviously I'm kind of front-loading a lot of the design work, talking to Claude, getting it to create a bunch of different spec files so that it understands the assignment. And I have these 5 core pieces of building blocks that I established very easily. It took me about an hour, let's say, of iterating and reviewing. Most of that time's reviewing to make sure all of these 5 segments of the application I'm trying to build are in fact correct and what I'm hoping the output will look like. And then inside of my Claude, I basically just go OpenSpec. Once I know all those specs are correct, I just hit OpenSpec apply. And then Fable runs off and does its thing and builds the thing. And I basically one-shot the application, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's pretty damn good. So if we take a look here, Agentic Project Tracker. So this is a one-shot, right? You can have a look here. For this project specifically, nothing's been committed yet because for demonstration purposes, I actually wanted to leave the changes uncommitted so I could visualize them in this tracker here. But we can see, if I look at this archive, there's no like previous designs. So that means this has been a one-shot in terms of spec-driven development. I've created that spec and I've gotten Fable to just one-shot the thing. And this is effectively what it's built. So in my dashboard here, I can see all of the projects. It's really easy to add projects. I just add them from a root directory location that has like a Git folder. So it's effectively like a repository, and we can see this one here, this agentic study platform, has been hooked up to a CI/CD pipeline, so we can see all the passing and failing things. That's what I wanted. We can see sessions, we can see Git diffs. I don't think this one has a proper Git diff, so let me look at my project tracker. So this project is actually the app that I'm building here, this app. And we can see the whole Git diff of the changes required to build this thing. With sessions that I used to build this thing, so you can see the sessions were pretty much just 2 sessions, and those I think were just different terminal instances, so they might have even been the same one, I'm not entirely sure. But you can see this is basically the conversation history of me just like one-shotting it with spec-driven development. And yeah, just really impressive. I feel like this is a really good demonstration of Claude just doing its thing, one-shotting a project. I know that like if you're using agents on an existing architecture or implementation, like let's say you've got some kind of monolithic architecture, like it's harder to get Claude to do its thing consistently. Like it's always easier to get it built using existing new projects, right? Because it doesn't need to have a comprehension of the existing code base. So like one-shots are a unrealistic metric because it doesn't have any other code it's working off of. But I feel like this specific use case, an example of me having built this thing in, maybe 2 or 3 hours of effort from myself, it's really impressive, and it's kind of crazy, to be honest. I really wasn't expecting Claude Fable 5 to be this good. And yeah, it's been now a tool that I want to push live, publish to release, and start integrating into my own internal workflow, because it's going to clean up that iteration, or clean up my specific workflow of working with agents in the CLI, which I think is still actually my preferred approach to working with agents, is having multiple in one big screen that I can concurrently execute at the same time and kind of monitor and see how they're progressing. And then I'll flick over to this screen here and I can see the Git diffs and session states and all that stuff. But one of the prompt details as well was, I haven't tested this, mind you, but if like Claude is waiting for input, this session state here should allow me to also respond to that input. And I also want to integrate like notifications so that this application can then alert me when one of my projects that I'm concurrently building is like ready to have some kind of input from a human in the loop. So yeah, that's pretty much my experience so far using Fable 5 this week, and specifically today. So this agentic project tracker was built just today. This was like an idea I had and I just decided to execute, and boom, done. Kind of crazy. Yeah, let me know if you've had any cool experiences with Fable this week, and I look forward to posting an update on my actual workflow, which is this whole like approach to using AI in a future video. See you later.